Hey everyone, this is Songtradr Happy Hour. Today I'm joined by two of the key leads at 99 Lives, a record label focused on providing music for content creators. Excited to welcome CEO Heather Johnson, who also moonlights as an advisory board member of A2IM. Joining us as well is Ryan Capps, co-founder of 99 Lives, and Pretzel, the world's first platform to provide stream-safe music for live streamers. Ryan is also a full-time Twitch partner. Amazing. Welcome, Heather and Ryan. Hi.
Hello.
It's so good to have you both. Our topic today is how to start a record label, which sounds very simple, but we know it's not. So I thought maybe we could start with a few fundamentals. Ryan, maybe we can start with you. What was the initial intention or the mission for 99 Lives, and has this changed?
So Nate and I were of the mindset that I love performing and I love being a Twitch partner, and I like it's my full-time gig right now. I rolled off of the 99 Lives and Pretzel day-to-day about 3 years ago. And it just kind of stayed on as an advisor and as an equity owner. But in the beginning, as much as I love to create content, it's such a volatile thing. So ultimately, Nate and I were looking at, there are all these different problems and issues that content creators face. So we wanted to start down the process of the road of fixing what we saw were some of the key things that were giving content creators headaches. We picked music as the first thing. We didn't think it would be simple, but it ate the better part of a decade, and we didn't do anything else. So we saw other people, like, I don't want to point out anyone else in the industry, but we saw other people in the space. And while they may have been succeeding, we saw where one place where we didn't feel like artists were being treated well, and we saw other places where we felt like the end consumers weren't being treated well, and the content creators were kind of being bent over a barrel. And so the intention really was that we wanted to put our money where our mouth was and do a label the way that we thought it should be done, where artists were treated correctly and respected, and where content creators got high quality music that wasn't just kind of stuff that was thrown together in an afternoon and was their only option. So that was the initial kind of over coffee brainstorm.
Yeah, that's a great mission. And Heather, several years down the track now, and I know that you're an advocate for maintaining the value of music and independent artists' rights. Does that mission still ring true today?
Yeah, very much so. It's just shifted a little bit because, one of the main goals that 99 Lives had at the beginning was, how do you provide high quality commercial release music that was safe for use by content creators that they would not only want in their broadcast, but they would actually want to listen to in their own playlists and on the radio. And we still maintain that. But one of the biggest issues there is that YouTube is a huge source of revenue for a lot of artists and a lot of labels. And same thing, with Twitch, really at the time, there was really no way to monetize Twitch. And our competitors in the space were free, right? And so we allow content creators to use our music in exchange for attribution. And we do so knowing that, that's revenue source that we're not going to get back, right? And over the years, we've seen some shifts. As something goes viral, it can really reflect in plays on Spotify. But, if you don't get that virality on either platform, you really don't see the return on investment in it. But what we have seen is it's built a really good relationship with content creators. And we found other ways that we can kind of ingrain that in our business model. And part of it has been connecting artists with content creators, turning artists into content creators that stream on these platforms, create content on these platforms, and find ways to just kind of integrate the two businesses and use it as a marketing endeavor. At the same time, still trying to respect the value of what all of these artists and writers and composers have created and find other avenues of revenue for them. And sync has still been a big part of it. It's just been more, your television and video games and some of the other micro sync markets, just not Twitch and YouTube. We've more used it as a marketing opportunity.
Right. Fantastic. Well, so to give us some context about the trajectory of 99 Lives, maybe we can just map out very quickly the timeline of 99 Lives growth with some key moments. Do either of you want to tackle that one?
I'll let Ryan tackle the first half because we've got a really interesting first couple of years, and he was most of that.
Okay, so we went around. God, what we didn't know would fill the Grand Canyon, and I guess that'll be the whole point of today, right? Is that what we didn't know would fill the Grand Canyon because there was nobody there to tell us, and it really felt like anybody who was in the industry really sat on it. They were like, "Oh man, rooting for you." And we're like, yeah, well, if we can just get our name on everyone's lips, then that really, for us, felt like that was the only thing we needed to do. And they said, well, yeah, that's every business in the world. Good luck, pal. But the problem that they didn't kind of bank on was that we pulled together the label. And then right out of the gate, we had Ian Stapleton, who goes by the YouTube name Sunday, as one of our business partners. And he had never endorsed anything commercially on his multi-million subscriber YouTube channel before. And so he came out one day and said, hey, I built a music label with some friends. You should go check it out. It's over on this website. And we expected kind of some slow growth that we had seen interest from friends. And instead we got hit with the same amount of traffic that you would expect with a Super Bowl commercial. It crashed a website that we were doing digital giveaways with that Nate built anticipating heavy traffic, but we got hit with halftime at the Super Bowl type of traffic that crashed everything we were doing. We shot out of the gate, and instantly, as somebody who had never really been in music before, I was the guy who collected all the jobs that nobody else wanted to do. So I was trying to tackle legal. I was trying to tackle accounting. I was trying to do customer service, working with the artists, taking their emails and Skype calls and trying to make them feel
distribution. You did distribution, yeah, rights registration. Yeah, you did everything.
I figured out what PROs were because nobody wanted to tell me because I have a theater degree and I can't sing and I don't play a musical instrument. And here we were all of a sudden with my email being hit by billboards saying, hey, you guys are charting. You're right behind the Chainsmokers on EDM. Do you guys have cover art? And I was like, yeah, no, we do. And so for I still get hit with Facebook memories where it says, hey, remember when you told everybody that you were at 121 in the Billboard Top 200 of all categories with your third release from your label? So we started off like that, but we had two guys who were really nice guys who were our music guys, who were professional musicians. And unfortunately, they knew a lot about being on the music side of things. But when it came to being on the other side of the table, unfortunately, and we didn't kind of realize this, none of us really knew what to do, including them. And so we didn't really know how to maintain that momentum. We had this insane launch that anybody would have literally killed to have procured. And I feel like we squandered's a tough word, but I wish, knowing now what we know now, I wish we could go back with that same kind of meteoric rise and pulled the levers differently. And then it wasn't panic, but it was us all being very cognizant of the fact that we had kind of lost a grip on the horse's reins and that it was starting to plateau and then descend. And then the title of CEO kind of got hot potatoed around because we just didn't know who was smartest to be running it. And I think I did it for a month and a half. And I was like, no, this is not my gig. Because I feel like we were just, we were gifted a golden goose and we just didn't know how to care for it and we didn't know how to feed it. And things never went, it's been in the black every year it's existed. And yet at the same time, what I wouldn't give to go back in time with all the knowledge that Heather and Nate have sort of garnered over the years, the relationships that have been built over time with Ryan McKay, me, it's always been a very familial label. And I just feel like obviously we could have done more if we had known ahead of time better what we were doing.
I think that's a typical startup story where everyone's doing way too much of everything. But I think getting to where you did is certainly an amazing feat on a theater degree too, no less.
I lost a lot of sleep. I was pulling 16-hour days, 6-7 days a week for literal years. I didn't think that my content creation career would ever be enough to pay all my bills. I kind of put all my eggs in the label and eventually Pretzel as well. I'd put all my eggs in those working out for me. So I would stream in the morning and go until like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And then I would stop, stretch my legs. And then I would get into a Slack call with Nate and stay in the Slack call until about midnight or 1 in the morning. And I did that and helped my wife beat breast cancer all at the same time. I aged probably 15 years in 5 years. I looked like one of those before and after photos on a president where you go in and it's like full head of hair. There's 25 pounds lighter. I look like I was in my 20s. People like, oh, I can't believe you're in your 30s. And I came out the other side and it's like, oh my God, are you, you look like you looked into the Ark of the Covenant. You look terrible. So it was rough because as the person who wasn't the music guy, as the person who wasn't the tech guy, I felt like sweat equity was really all I had to offer. So by God, no one was going to outwork me if I could help it. Even if I didn't know what I was doing, I was just going to go learn. So,
it's tough because, in the whole team of 5 people, not a single person we had musicians, but we didn't have music business people right. That understood rights management, that understood data management, that understood the value of those things. And that information isn't necessarily free flowing. It's more so now. You can find a lot more books and a lot more people willing to kind of talk about the experience, but every person that I talk to now that wants to start a label, they get wrapped up in the cool creativity aspect, the cover art, the music itself, the grassroots campaigns of chasing down, influencers to promote their music or blogs or playlisting. And all of those things can be fun and the curation process can be fun. But on the backside, probably about 80% of this is about knowing where to register your rights, making sure you're chasing down your rights and protecting those rights, which there aren't a lot of tools to do. Making sure you've got a good legal team in your corner that's willing to chase down when someone has downloaded your asset and has now put it up on, DistroKid claiming that it's yours. Like probably a good 20% of my job is chasing those things down. Just the legal end of it, right? And it's hard to learn. I remember
sitting in jury duty, wondering if I was going to get called up. And I was sitting there with the book, All You Need to Know About the Music Business by Donald Passman. Yeah. And I was sitting there reading it, and it's written from the point of view of like, if you're an artist, here's what you should look for in the label. And it was mostly about, obviously it's like a music industry Bible. But the thing is like, here's how artists don't get screwed. And so I was sitting there taking notes, basically like a photo negative, where I was like, we shouldn't do this because this is what bad labels. Don't be Berry Gordy. Don't Motown people. Like I was just going like, okay, well, here's the holes. So let's reverse engineer the other direction. And then on top of that, all the sexy stuff got a lot of the attention, but I felt like Chicken Little a lot of the time going, we need bookkeeping. We need to know how much of our money is ours and how much is royalties for artists. None of us seem to know what sync rights are. None of us seem to know the difference between the types of rights that a track can hold and who can hold them and
who collects them.
Right. And thankfully, Nate, our CTO, who is now a member of the Songtradr family. Nate is just a voracious sponge when it comes to anything, whether it's technology or music law. If it's something that he can figure out and it solves a problem that's in front of him, we had a Nate who would sit down and just go, I'm going to figure out 100 years of music law. Mm-hmm. And then he would go do it. And then much later on, years down the line, tens of thousands of dollars later, he was the one who went to the lawyers and said, here's the contract that you draw up. We had a lawyer in Miami who was an entertainment lawyer, but he wanted everything to be wet ink. And we're like, dude, none of us live in the same state. And all of the music we're signing is from Europe. What are you talking about wet ink? And he was like, well, I just don't like e-signatures. And I was like, this is not going to work. Plus your contracts are 36 pages long.
And aggressive. That was one thing that was hard for us to realize. We've gone through probably 18 iterations of our contract, really trying to be good actors in this space, and realizing that we didn't know what we didn't know. And the first lawyer we picked up was definitely someone that represented the big guys. And
our first lawyer represented Dave Matthews and Fish, and that was cool to say that, but he also treated us like we were going to be a brick and mortar place with a receptionist down in downtown Richmond, Virginia, with a little candy tray and a waiting area. And I was like, we don't need insurance. We don't need everything that a brick and mortar. Half of us haven't met, man. So just like help me help myself here. It took Nate going in and teaching himself our bookkeeping software, because I spent thousands of dollars on 3 different bookkeepers, and said I drew pictures. I drew like stick figure pictures of saying like, money goes into Pretzel, money goes into 99 Lives. Some of this money belongs to artists, and some of this money belongs to us. And at any given moment in time, we need to know which is which. And they were like, you got it. Let's schedule a meeting to talk about this more next week. And then one place, every time it came time to have that meeting, my rep was fired, and I'd have to learn somebody new and walk them through it again. So Nate, and to a lesser extent but Nate and I had to sit down, and he went, okay, our bookkeeping software does this. I'm going to lie and tell it I'm an accountant. And over the course of a sleepless weekend filled with energy drinks, Nate just wrote the programming that we needed to have our royalties tracked in real time.
Yeah.
Amazing. So many amazing tips there. And look, we all wish that we could do things a little bit differently looking back. But you mentioned, Ryan, reading a book while you're in jury duty. And I'm not going to ask you which trial you were sitting in. But if we had to write a book on the fundamentals of setting up a label, what would the contents page look like? Because it would just be giving the bullets, right?
I honestly think that the first section in the table of contents for a book about setting up a music label, especially if it's in the United States, but I'm sure you can find stuff like this in any country, needs to be a collection of some of the most absurd laws that you're going to have to still continue to abide by, so that you know how goofy and ridiculous the world of music legal is when you go into it. For example, in America, we have... as far as I'm aware, it's still on the books, a law from like 1910 that was originally created to monitor money that was generated by self-playing pianos at bars. And that law is still enforced in 2021.
Mechanical rates?
Probably. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was kind of the point where I was just like, hey, Nate, I think I might be done. I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
You wouldn't have to worry about A&R in that point, though.
Right.
Yeah.
So like that's the first part. And then after that, like I think I want to echo what Heather said, which is you need to be grounded. The unsexy foundation needs to be built and needs to be rock solid first. If you don't understand the different kinds of rights that you represent or are trying to acquire, if you don't understand exactly how you're going to fight on behalf of your artists, if you don't even know the rules of the game that you're in. And then on top of that, again, we came dangerously close at one time. We were not paying everybody, but we were paying people who were running out of runway on our label. And I just kind of had a holy smokes, I think we're in trouble moment where I was like, I think the amount of money we have to give us and the amount of money that's due to artists is getting very close to each other, but I didn't have the correct bookkeeping in place to show anybody that. So I just kind of had to run into a meeting and wave my hands around and just get everyone to pay attention to me until we figured it out. And that's the kind of stuff that you really don't want to be laying track in front of the train while it's moving. So
the other thing that we kind of had an advantage too is we had a Nate for the knowledge piece of it too, but one of the biggest things in music industry is there's just not a lot of tech, and what tech exists is expensive. And so we had a lot of build versus buy conversations, and Nate is a software guy. So he built, we have a royalty payment system that I maintain still. Like he taught me how to write code over the years while I was watching them do this before I took it over. And he built that. We have a rights tracking system that he built for us that I maintain, right? And these are things that cost, like I've looked at potentially replacing it so that I don't have to maintain it. And we're talking like even for our size label, something that starts at $2,400 a month. And that's not even facilitating the payment. That's just doing the calculations. And then I still have to pay for the email statements to go out, right? Which we do ourselves, and because we built it ourselves, it's $15, right? Most labels don't have that. And so you're going to be living out of spreadsheets. You're going to be paying accountants. I mean, I've talked to labels in the indie space that are still on the bigger side that still use spreadsheets and accountants, because it's still cheaper to have 2 accountants on staff than it is to pay for some of this tech, right? So we are kind of a lesson in failing up. We had the big influencer, we had a tech guy, and we didn't know what we didn't know. So we built what we could and somehow survived through it, honestly. Now we're doing really, really well. Yeah.
Our first royalty system, I paid 4 figures to an accountant in Dallas, and he built it for me on an Excel spreadsheet. And after our third release, putting information in and telling it to spit out answers, it would lock the computer up for like 20 minutes because, he was like, you need a database. And I was like, sweet, tell me more. I'll never start another company without having an absolutely rock solid tech guy, unless it's even if it was like a shoe store. Like, I just don't know that I'd ever start a restaurant here in Richmond. I don't think I'd start a company without having somebody who is technically savvy, because I don't think we survived this without having that piece. And at one point, I can't believe I have to say this, but at one point I had to get into a low-key argument about whether or not it was worth it to bring Nate on after I went and met him at a conference. And I was just like, I will leave if you do not bring this man on board, because we will not survive without him. I don't care how many cool songs you sign. I don't care how much cool artwork we get. We will collapse under our own weight. So
find yourself a Nate. You can't have our Nate. He's ours.
True. It's true.
You go find yourself a Nate.
Well, I was going to say that maybe all of you should hire your services out, given that you have so much experience now.
If I didn't spend 80 hours a week on the label, then sure. Because it's still a one-man show for the most part, and I still maintain the tech. So, yeah. And I mentored a couple other, I have an artist that's now trying to create his own label in the same space, and we had a kind of a come to Jesus conversation for 2 hours. And afterwards, he's like, I need a drink. And I was like,
I can't count the number. I can't count the number of those conversations I've had with artists that I like, even artists that I think are competent adults. Like there are some of them that are like essentially wide-eyed children that are just kind of like, I'm going to be the next, Diplo, and I'm going to have a huge label. And it's like, okay, lad, let's you and me sit down and we'll talk about it. And I basically start to throw the scary stuff at him, and that goes away. And then I've had other people that are smart, and it takes less time to talk them off of it, because I think it doesn't take them very long to acknowledge the scope of what they're actually trying to endeavor. It is at the end very like, yeah, I need a drink very quickly. I need a drink.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is a great time to ask you, what are some key differences then to consider if you're an artist setting up a label for your own music versus one that's setting up a label to discover and nurture other talent?
Yeah. So, that is essentially the key difference, right? If you're just looking to set up a label to facilitate your own distribution, et cetera, there are so many services out there now that allow you to do that without having to stand up an actual label, right? There's incredibly successful, what I call DIY artists, and they've signed with us on occasion. One of them is a gentleman named Andrew, approaching Nirvana. His other half for a while was actually one of the founders of our label. And I've watched him, use services like TuneCore and DistroKid and successfully, Songtradr has a distribution platform. Sounddrop has a distribution platform. There's so many out there that you don't have to do the work for standing up a label if you're just looking to provide an outlet for yourself for distribution. If you have the will and the creativity and the willingness to knock on doors, you can do it without a label. A label makes it faster. A label makes it a little bit easier. And labels are now having to redefine what value we have to artists, right? With these, self-serve platforms. But if you are looking to actually grow and develop another artist, that's when you're going to start delving into this. And it's a ton of work. I would say that, we're talking a lot about like why you shouldn't do it and why you have to be kind of a little off to give this a shot and think it's easy. But I love what I do so much so that I've turned down other jobs because I like what I do so much, and I'm passionate about my artists, and I'm passionate about what we do, and I refuse to walk away from this. If you have that, then you're going to like it. Every single night spent staring at spreadsheets and zero and your bank statement, it'll end up being worth it, even when, we get shout outs from artists that are excited when they get paid quarterly. Like, that's a huge thing. So, but yeah, if you're just doing it for yourself, go DIY. Right? Like, go through some of these self-service platforms that offer so many cool services for promotion, for distribution, for growth, even for sync pitching. But if you're looking to develop another person, be beware that's a long road, but it's fun. It's worth it. A little crazy.
I think if you're thinking about promoting yourself, then I absolutely agree with that. That instead of trying to build a label to prop yourself up, you're probably better suited just taking that same amount of time and really diving into the nuts and bolts of how the music world functions around you, so that you can better market yourself. And then you may still find yourself with label that you obviously you'll trust, because they won't be able to pull. It's like going to a car dealership and being a gearhead. They're not going to be able to pull the wool over your eyes, because you know how the engine works, you know how financing works. And so it'll be pretty quick that they'll say, well, how about if you sign here and we'll throw in a pretty pink pin? And it's like, that's not enough, dummy. It's like, so like at that point, when you can represent yourself and when you understand the nuts and bolts of it all, if you do find yourself looking for representation, it makes it a lot easier. It would need to be like, somebody would need to know really quickly whether or not would you be excited about spending a weekend with your face buried in spreadsheets?
Yeah.
As excited as you would be looking at album art, as excited as you would be talking about a potential shoot for a music video, because it needs to be that level of intensity and passion, or else you're probably better off letting someone else do it. And there's no shame in that. Like, leave that to the people who are good at it. Leave it to the Heathers of the world who really enjoy it. They'll get it done for you. Don't take that on lightly, because it's most of the heavy lifting.
We're talking about some do's and don'ts of setting up a record label with Heather Johnson and Ryan Capps of 99 Lives. Hi, guys. Welcome back. So can I ask you, what factors determine a label's potential success or failure? And I know you've covered a few already, but any others you want to throw in?
That one's really hard, because some of it is just kind of stumbling on the right trend or the right artist or the right song. And so some of it is a modicum of luck. But I can tell you some ways that you surefire, like, good way to fail, and is, bad legal. That's a huge one, right? Make sure if you don't pick up templates online, right? Hire a lawyer, tell them your vision, right? Don't just say, I need legal that covers these rights. Tell them your vision, okay? And work with them to get what you need. Because we're a perfect example. We started out with a contract that was way more aggressive than what we had in mind for our artists. And
granted, it was real off-putting.
It was, and it was hard because we didn't really know what we were looking for. And what the most embarrassing thing is when you go to an artist and present them this contract and they go, are you trying to steal my firstborn? And you're just like, that's in the contract.
I had parents come to me and say, my 19-year-old showed me this contract, and I'm an arbiter, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm whatever, a barrister in London, and this is outrageous. And I was just like, I don't understand what half of it says. My guy down in Florida insists that we need all this. He also wants us to do it with wet signatures. So we're going to ignore that. But yeah, it was incredibly aggressive, and it felt bad, because we didn't know enough to be able to push back on our legal and say, that's over the top. We get that you're protecting us, but you're painting us like Hannibal Lecter. Like, it really, like, we are coming off as the bad guy. I think too many cooks in the kitchen. I think obviously, if you're going to have a label, you need to have somebody who's the piloting the helm of the ship and really trust what they're doing. Because when we hot potatoed it around, we made a lot of decisions that were things that we couldn't put back in Pandora's box once we had done them. We went free with all of our music, and that was, yeah, I saw you breathe in like a sharp pain, like a stabbing pain right here. Not either of our idea, but at the time it was, as we were losing our grip on that incredible forward momentum and Billboard calling every month as we were pushing out a new EP. As we were losing the momentum and our grasp on that, we started to panic, and we tinkered too much. And we didn't really stop to see if anything that we were doing long-term was working, because we just assumed it would work the same way it did the first time, with this catapulting up into the stratosphere. And I think we had too many people who had their ladle in the stock pot, and it kind of, for a while at least, kind of screwed up the recipe.
Knowing your market, right? Like, know who your customer is and know who your market is. So like that was one thing that we were like, yeah, we're gonna provide music for content creators. And then we use somebody, and that's, in our mind, we view that as like a B2B, right? So I am providing music for another business owner person that streams and is making money. And that's the kind of music that I want to make available to them. And then I want it to be something that they're going to be willing to listen to outside of it, right? And then we used Ian, who was our main promoter, but his audience isn't content creators. His audience is, Minecraft fans, like huge Minecraft fans. And so we did this all with the goal of promoting the music, but we missed that particular market. And then when it came around to it, was like, okay, we're capturing this other market. What can we do? These gamers that also love YouTube and are loving our music, how can we extract, I don't want to say extract more value, but maybe like get to know them a bit more and find more ways to, it's like, okay, we're in the BDC market. Let's go for it. Right. And then we kept going back to the content creators, right. Not actually fostering anything out with them other than just kind of trust that, our music was safe. And, we worked with all the content ID systems, built all the tech to handle that, fought for our rights to protect them. But it was just like this weird hodgepodge of, the wrong marketing techniques for the wrong audience. And, it's funny, so we're sitting there harping on this, on all the mistakes we made. Like, the label is successful. We're in the black. We sell money. We sell records consistently, and our artists make money, and we're known in the content creator space. But these are definitely things that, like, if we had been aware of that or taken just a moment to think about it, we'd be that much more ahead.
It's hard not to flog yourself over opportunity left on the table.
Yeah.
Like things go well and things are good and the catalog's awesome.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's rough to look at all the opportunity that just got kind of squandered because we didn't know any better and because we were stubborn. And it's like, well, I don't know that that's the audience we want. And we're like, do you understand how lucky we are to have any audience? It doesn't matter what audience you want us to have. We have an audience. Let's go sell to them. And it's like, it took us a long time to figure that out. And by then it wasn't too late, but it was definitely too late to hit it at a full sprint.
No, that's a really good point, actually, because you mentioned vision and you mentioned trends and being very smart with your marketing and your strategy. But when do you change your vision to match what's trending or what the business is telling you?
That's the whole, data, understand the data, understand what's being given to you, ask questions about it. Don't always trust the service level metrics that sound pretty. It's like, oh, okay, all of a sudden we're getting a bunch of Spotify plays. Mm-hmm. Well, why? Is it because did you get placed on the playlist? Did you get placed in a bunch of user playlists and now it's hitting the algorithm? Like, ask, that kid that just constantly is like, but why? Ask that over and over and over again until whoever you're working with, wants to cry. But it helps you get to the root of what's happening and then be willing to be flexible, right? We set out with the goal of going after content creators, but there were actually what we thought were only 2 labels in the market that did that. There were actually 5 at that point, and we didn't do enough market research to understand that. So while we continued to sign the rights to make our music available to content creators, we were really hitting it off with the Minecraft community, and we should have just kind of leaned into that. Yep. Yeah. So be flexible, understand the data, let it inform you, but don't always let it lead you, and be flexible.
That was the mindset that drove Nate and I together. There were definitely towards the end of my time there were sort of factions, and Nate and I were constantly we called it the fog of war, where we just kind of felt like we felt like as a company we were making almost knee-jerk decisions based on vanity metrics, and we were doing it based on the outline of something that we didn't see until it was right in front of our face. And so Nate and I went to Irvine, California for 2 weeks and just sat down and basically started reading books, got an Airbnb, and just said, we're so sick of not understanding what the tea leaves say. Let's just take 2 weeks. Let's talk to our friends in the industry. Let's eat good food. Heather was there, and we all just sat down and just said, okay, well, we need to have a better understanding of what we're doing. So the people who felt like-minded all ended up in the same spot. And we began what I'd like to believe is a lifelong marriage with like deep dive, data-driven decision-making that doesn't feel very, you just jerk the wheel at any side of stimulus, which is just going to end up running the car into a lamppost. So,
yeah, and it gives you whiplash as well, doesn't it?
it's brutal.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of a jokey little metaphor, but it really was like, it was putting me into a place of like anxiety attacks where I would wake up every morning with what felt like an anvil on my chest, because it just felt like we didn't know the way forward. And we were just kind of throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks. And that's like, at that point, you're just playing the lottery. And I hated that mentality. And so that was kind of where Nate and I kind of huddled off to the side and we're like, we hate this, right? I was like, yeah, no, I absolutely hate this.
Mhm.
And so we went off and kind of put ourselves in a retreat and said, we have to figure out how to do this better. And then we did.
And so if you had to do it all over again, what is one thing you would do differently? The one thing.
One.
The one.
The one that kickstarts everything differently.
So this would be mine if it were me starting it from the beginning. I worked for Apple for 5.5 years, and that is a kumbaya Kool-Aid drinking company that is really wonderful to its people, but they have a huge culture around feedback and mentorship. And I delved into software development after that and kind of lost that. And one of the first things that I did when I took back over was I need a mentor. I need somebody that's been in this. They may not have the same business model as I do, but they can at least educate me and tell me everything that they did wrong, that they want to warn me, and might deter me from doing this, but at least I'll have a realistic expectation of what I'm walking into. If it were me, would have done it sooner. Would have found somebody like a Ryan to tell me all the reasons why I shouldn't have done it. And then when I'm still persistent and sticking around, then go forward.
So I'm so happy that you found mentors, because I went like door knocking. I literally was just like looking up people who owned brick and mortar record labels in the state of Virginia and was sending them emails saying, I will come up and take you to a Michelin star restaurant if you will just talk to me about what in the hell I'm doing. One thing, huh? If I could pick one thing, I feel like there were a lot of times where if you think about like a natural disaster movie, and in the very beginning, like right when a guy rips a sheet off of the dot matrix printer and he looks at it and goes, man, these numbers don't add up. And then he runs to like the headlining, like, Chiwetel Ejiofor, like the big name scientist that you're going to be with for the rest of the movie. I was the guy who first rips the paper off and went, something about this doesn't line up. And I would just hand that off and be like, I hope you find something useful to do with that. And then I would just go die, anonymously in some hole somewhere. I wish that I had asserted myself more. There was a running joke with Nate where I get called Switzerland. And I feel like a lot of things that I don't like conflict. I really dislike personal conflict. I'm not the person that you send to haggle for a car. I was in a souk in Northern Africa and paid like $50 for some cheap beads because they were like, you remind me of my son. And he like pet my beard. And I was like, here's all my money. Yes, I love it. Please give me that $1 necklace for all my American dollars, please. Because I'm terrible at conflict. I just don't like butting my heads up against people. But there were definitely places. And it was something where Nate and I had to have, we call them, they talk about the come to Jesus talks, where Nate had to say, are you on my side or are you not? Because I kept being the person who straddled to try to be the mediator. And while that was useful talking to artists, and while that was useful talking to artist managers, and while that was useful talking to like Billboard or competitors or whoever internally, it usually meant that me as the deciding vote didn't like the pressure of that. Even though I knew which way my gut pointed, but I didn't want people to be upset with me. So I would just say, I see the validity of both cases, and then would sit back and fold my arms, and we would stagnate for another 3 or 4 months and just like get real head buddy about it.
I feel like you've gotten better at that. So
I've gotten older and tireder.
That's fair. Yeah.
So I don't have time to spare feelings anymore.
You're more
I feel like
firm with asking for what you want.
It's true nowadays.
Yeah.
Nowadays I'm better about it, but I realize what it may have cost us over time. And I think that's something that almost like a muscle, I've just had to work that out so that now, if I really feel like somebody is, for no good reason doing something that's hindering me or a business that I work on or anything really, that I got no problem saying, let's stop right here. That's wrong. And let me tell you why that's wrong. And just holding my ground on that. There's 100 other things that I could say would be the one thing that I would do differently. But that one's that's the truest one. That's the one that resonates the most.
Yeah, I'm the exact opposite. I dig my heels in.
Mama bear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you guys are like the scales, right? Balance each other out.
A little bit, yeah.
Little bit.
The important thing is that you got there and you're using that now. Ryan, I'm speaking specifically to you about what you just said. So there's value in that learning as much as it was painful. Sure.
And there's been a lot of that a lot of what I went through during my time there's a lot to be proud of. And I love that. I love the label and I'm rooting for the label, but there was a lot that I went through that just wasn't fun. I've never had any desire to be a full-time music guy. I just wanted to work in the content creation space. And I thought that solving problems for content creators was going to be how I was going to like justify my existence in the community. And then we picked music as the first thing we were going to tackle. And it just ate everybody alive for a decade. And I think, there's a lot that I learned, and there was a lot that I learned that I was capable of. And I'd like to think, like, it's funny because Heather would be going through like old files and she'd call me up on Discord and she'd say, boo, did you? And then she'd read some old document that was basically me just saying like, here's everything that's wrong. And it's all spot on. But it's like 5 years ago. And it was just me being the only one going like, does no one else see that we don't have? And it was a page long checklist. And those were everywhere.
It was 4 pages long, and it was literally a brain vomit of everything, like from down to, I'm afraid we're going to get sued by our artists because our legal is scary. Like, it was everything. But to be fair, the reason why the label still exists today, because you get that huge flare up and you get really careless with your money and you think you can spend anything for the label and pay anybody's salaries. The reason why the label still is today is because of Ryan. Because if he hadn't put his foot down about stuff and kept it going and registering things and making sure we checked all those boxes, we wouldn't be here.
I was the I was the person who was like the professional anxiety. Like I was, all I did was worry. And then like Nate would say something like, "Oh man, that's really good. Did you see this? Did you see where we got up there on Billboard?" And I was like, "They didn't use the album art. I sent him album art. Why didn't he? Our album art is not a chronograph with a question mark next to it. Why did he not?" Nate would have to like virtually pet me and just be like, "No, Bubba, come on." Just reel it back in. And I'm like, that's fine. I'm going to email him. And find out what's what.
I'm feeling your pain. And
it was a lot, but it also taught me what I could, it taught me a lot about what I can handle. I'm not really worried. Like nothing really scares me anymore after kind of what we went through to get it launched and to keep it afloat. It really was, there were days where it felt like we were laying track in front of a train while it was moving. And that was terrifying day in and day out. And now it's super gratifying to see Heather with a business that functions and has pieces that it's supposed to have. And I just like, the next time I see you, I'm going to high five you because you have what I wanted somebody to have at the label. And it took me falling on the battlefield and just remember me and go on and build this thing. It was brutal for a couple of years of just like not
super inspiring for start a label. You'll be scared for the rest of your life until you get it off to somebody else.
Isn't that any business? So it's like, like, I mean, that's 100%. The thing is like right now, I have equity in 99 Lives, but ultimately the thing that is all my eggs in one basket now is the channel. And that's terrifying. And I'm the only employee and make all the decisions. And it's like, that's still super nerve wracking. It's just not as nerve wracking as getting like Discord calls and Skype calls at 3 a.m. from like Australia or Western Europe going like, where's my money? And I'm like, oh God, you realize it's 3 there where I live, bub. Like, I get that it's morning where you are, but you didn't make any money. Sorry. Or it went out yesterday. There's a lot of, I don't like failure. So I was really hustling hard for literal years. I didn't want to look foolish by just like letting all the juggling pieces fall out of my hands.
And welcome back. We're with Heather Johnson and Ryan Capps from 99 Lives. We have a couple more questions for you. First of all, does the 99 Lives name have anything to do with cats on steroids, maybe, given that they typically only have 9 lives, right?
There's a history with this. There's a history with this.
I'll let you field that one.
I think you might know more.
I like the TLDR is that we picked the name because we wanted to insinuate that it was like playing a game on easy mode. So like there are codes that you can enter that'll give you unlimited lives. So we did that and we ran with it. And we got really cool art drawn up. And then we found out through the grapevine like a month later that apparently Monster Cat was talking about doing like another spinoff label and calling it 9 Lives, and had sunk thousands of dollars into drawing all that up and had to scrap it because we got to market first. So,
and they thought we did it intentionally, and we didn't.
Our first step out of the gate with Monster Cat was not great because they thought that we had caught wind of that and had sabotaged it intentionally. So,
yeah,
but you hadn't.
We had not.
No, we didn't mean to at all. It was 100% a video game theme.
It was a video game reference,
right? It wasn't cat themed at all. Cat ears, not cat themed. It was 100% just kind of a nod to video games. And if you take a look at our art, everything's robots and video games and pink headphones. We weren't trying to step on anybody's brand. It just happened to be a not fun coincidence. So, Mike Darlington, if you're watching, we're sorry. We did not mean to do that.
Sorry, Mike.
Sorry. We're really sorry.
Sending a message and love to Mike. And next question for Ryan. You have a nickname, yeah?
Yeah.
Wait, which one?
Hang on, Heather put me up to this one.
That's fine.
Oh, we call you Taffy because we have 2 Ryans in the team.
Oh, yeah.
We call you Taffy, which is short for McLaffyTaffy.
That's true.
Is your channel.
That was my wife and I got in a fake argument like 14 years ago, and I jokingly said that I was going to name my first son McLaffyTaffy, which was the dumbest thing I could think of in the moment. And her joke back was, I already have a divorce. We had been married for like a month, and she was like, I already have a divorce lawyer on speed dial. And I was like, okay, my apologies, honey. And so I went and named it. I went and named my Xbox Live account that because it was just the most recent dumb name that had popped into my head. And now I have merchandise and trademarks, and
it's a brand.
Yeah, now it's my brand. It's just a stupid fake fight that I had with my wife, and I needed an Xbox handle. And the next thing you know is flash forward years later, and it's people call out Ryan, and my head doesn't turn, but people call it Taffy, and I could be at the grocery store or at a conference. If somebody says Taffy, my head whips around like I heard it in my mother's voice. I'm just like, what? Where? What? Who knows me? So
yeah. So don't go to the local taffy pool because
no. That's I'm just ducking Ferrero Rocher because they own Willy Wonka. I'm just hoping that they never come at me with crosshairs on my forehead.
Yeah. So not so dumb after all. That name.
That's true.
It's fitting.
It's true.
Well, so now we're going to move to a couple of community questions. So we had a couple come in overnight, and this one is from Sean Michael Mulligan. He says, I'm curious to know what legal forms are needed to be filed and if there is a recommended how-to or step-by-step guide out there that is relevant for starting a label in 2021. Big question.
There's not really a how-to. There is that book, which is oftentimes called The Bible of the Music Industry, which by Don Passman, which is always a good reference. But as far as a step-by-step is concerned, right, ultimately, first and foremost, you need to file a business, right? And you also have to be aware of what you intend to do with that business. Is it going to be a partnership with another person? Are you ever intending to take on funding? If so, you've got to file your business in a different way. And so there's so much to it. You're going to have to do quite a bit of research. We found lawyers.
Yeah,
right?
The step-by-step guide is called hiring a lawyer.
Save up the money and hire a lawyer and tell them your vision. Like that's if you want to protect your future, what you're investing in, the best option you can do is find a good lawyer. Don't find forums online. Find a really good lawyer. Someone in the music industry, preferably. We use someone we call my lawyer friend, Noah Downs, which is actually a friend of Ryan's. And then another lawyer we've worked with as well is Erin Jacobson, and she is absolutely amazing.
She's a juggernaut, man.
She is. So if you can reach out to her, like she's set up multiple labels, multiple publishing entities, and she's just a cool person to talk to.
Great. Anything on that, Ryan, or should I say Taffy?
That's honestly that hits truer for me these days. Ultimately, is that's my take too. Is that there are books and websites that'll probably give you a little bit of guidance, but anything that's off the shelf or cookie cutter, we've found forms in the wild. I've been handed a form by a lawyer that we fired. That the company that was in the contract was still the previous company he had given this contract to. Like, he hadn't cut and paste out the company's name for our name. So I was going through and finding like Tom Willis Mitsubishi. And I was like, I'm not a car dealership guy. Like, is this like, I almost sent this out to somebody to sign. Is this really okay? And that's how I went and found Noah was, we grew him. Like, we basically cultivated our own lawyer who had just passed the bar and was looking for his like specialty and his niche. And so we basically laminated our vision over the top of his training, which was still a pretty clean palette. And then found Aaron when we felt like we needed somebody who had a little more industry experience to fine tune things. But, we spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on really good album art. But the more important purchase of more thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars was getting legal straightened away.
It's a very litigious industry, right? So you want to make sure that you have everything in check.
I had a lawyer that we worked with for a while who said that he represented people in film, he represented people in sports and MMA and in adult film, and he said that there was no more cutthroat legal industry than music. He said just nothing else held a candle to it.
Wow, good advice. The next question is from @HRashikesh_Mahesh. That's a good name. I want to start an online music record label in India. Thoughts?
I mean, it comes down to kind of similar things that we talked about before. It's like, know your audience, right? Are you looking to develop artists? Are you looking to do what we do, which is we sign on a per track per EP basis and try to give, brand new bedroom producers a leg up and a chance to get the music out there? What are you looking to do? And does it play to your market? Are you looking to stay within India for your market? Are you looking to go worldwide? So what music do you want to bring out there? You want to be experimental? Understanding those pieces will get you started. Right?
Yeah. Literally sitting down and figuring out what your mission statement is, sitting down and figuring out how you want to go about it, figuring out what your points of differentiation are from your competitors, what kind of competitors there are out there. Like, those are my thoughts. If you can answer those questions for me and pretend that I'm potentially an investor or somebody that you want to come on as an equity partner that will help you, that has a skill set that will help you be, I'm your tech guy. You've got to sell. Like, there's a lot of salesmanship, especially in the beginning, where we had to get artists who didn't know us from a hole in the ground on board. We had to get people to come on and take points of equity to work on things that we needed done, but we had to sell them on why their time was well spent with us.
Versus getting a paycheck.
Right. Right. Because ultimately we had to convince people that we were doing something that needed to exist, tell them the why it needed to exist, and then hype them up on how excited we were to do it. And that was in like a 360-degree scope of artists and other labels and, mentors and lawyers and art, graphic designers. And so that was the more questions you can answer for me about why you need to start a label, the better I think you'll find your own answers. And then get great legal.
Well, Heather Johnson and Ryan McLaffyTaffy Caps.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining today. Great insights and advice. I'm sure that a lot of people would find that very, very helpful, what you said. And to our audience out there, thanks so much for joining Happy Hour, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Heather, Ryan.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.